Hi boys and girls, Mrs. Blackburn here today for your writing lesson. We are going to be looking at author's craft. The author we will be studying is Robert Munsch. Before you begin, I would go ahead and grab some paper and pencil, a notebook or something, so that you can take notes along with the video, and then that way it will be easier for you to complete the puzzle piece. So if you do not have those items, go ahead and pause the video and go grab your paper and pencil. Okay. Go ahead and begin. Okay, study authors to learn about their craft. That's where we are going today. Our learning goals. Students will be able to identify similar characteristics by the same author. Students will be able to use the terms author, characteristics, and craft. Your success criteria. I can successfully identify characteristics by the same author. I can successfully use the terms author, characteristics, and craft. We will be reading several books by the author Robert Munsch. Purple, Green, and Yellow is one that I already mentioned. We will also be looking at Thomas's Snowsuit later on today. And then in this activity today, this lesson, we will be listening to Stephanie's Ponytail. So you will be looking for the author's style, craft, and characteristics of his writing. So you'll ask yourself a couple of questions as you are note-taking and listening to the stories. One, you're going to ask yourself, what do you notice about the author's writing style? Like, what are you noticing about what he's doing during his writing? Does he do anything that is the same in his books? Okay, so listen carefully. Remember, we're looking for what is unique to Robert Munsch's writing style or craft. We're going to start off with Stephanie's Ponytail.
Stephanie's Ponytail by Robert Munsch, illustrated by Michael Marchenko. One day, Stephanie went to her mom and said, "None of the kids in my class have a ponytail. I want a nice ponytail coming right out the back." So Stephanie's mom gave her a nice ponytail coming right out the back. When Stephanie went to school, the other kids looked at her and said, "Ugly, ugly, very ugly." Stephanie said, "It's my ponytail and I like it." The next morning when Stephanie went to school, all the other girls had ponytails coming out the back. Stephanie looked at them and said, "You are all a bunch of copycats. You just do whatever I do. You don't have a brain in your heads." The next morning, the mom said, "Stephanie, would you like a ponytail coming out the back?" Stephanie said, "No." "Then that's that," said her mom. "That's the only place you can do ponytails." "No, it's not," said Stephanie. "I want one coming out the side, just above my ear." "Very strange," said the mom. "Are you sure that is what you want?" "Yes," said Stephanie. So her mom gave Stephanie a nice ponytail coming out right above her ear. When she went to school, the other kids saw her and said, "Ugly, ugly, very ugly." Stephanie said, "It's my ponytail and I like it." The next morning, when Stephanie came to school, all the girls, and even some of the boys, had nice ponytails coming out just above their ears. The next morning, the mom said, "Stephanie, would you like a ponytail coming out the back?" Stephanie said, "No." "Would you like one coming out the side?" "No." "Then that's that," said her mom. "There is no other place you can do ponytails." "Yes, there is," said Stephanie. "I want one coming out of the top of my head like a tree." "That's very, very strange," said her mom. "Are you sure that is what you want?" "Yes," said Stephanie. So her mom gave Stephanie a nice ponytail coming out of the top of her head like a tree. When Stephanie went to school, the other kids saw her and said, "Ugly, ugly, very ugly." Stephanie said, "It's my ponytail and I like it." The next day, all of the girls and all of the boys had ponytails coming out the top. It looked like broccoli was growing out of their heads. The next morning, the mom said, Stephanie, would you like a ponytail coming out the back? Stephanie said, no. Would you like one coming out the side? No. Would you like one coming out the top? No. Then that is definitely that, said the mom. There is no other place you could do ponytails. Yes, there is, said Stephanie. I want one coming out the front and hanging down in front of my nose. But nobody will know if you're coming or going, her mom said. Are you sure that is what you want? Yes, said Stephanie. So her mom gave Stephanie a nice ponytail coming out the front. On the way to school, she bumped into 4 trees, 3 cars, 2 houses, and 1 principal. When she finally got to her class, the other kids saw her and said, ugly, ugly, very ugly. Stephanie said, it's my ponytail and I like it. The next day, all of the girls and all of the boys and even the teacher had ponytails coming out the front and hanging down in front of their noses. None of them could see where they were going. They bumped into the desks and they bumped into each other. They bumped into the walls, and by mistake, 3 girls went into the boys' bathroom. Stephanie yelled, you're all a bunch of brainless copycats. You just do whatever I do. When I come tomorrow, I am going to have shaved my head. The first person to come the next day was the teacher. She had shaved her head and she was bald. The next to come were the boys. They had shaved their heads and they were bald. The next to come were the girls. They had shaved their heads and they were bald. The last person to come was Stephanie, and she had a nice little ponytail coming right out the back. Thanks for listening. If you haven't already, please subscribe.
All right, boys and girls, so that's the end of Stephanie's ponytail. And we will go on to our next story so that you can compare and contrast the books. This one is called Purple, Green, and Yellow. And remember to be taking notes as you are listening.
Purple, Green, and Yellow. Published by Anik Press Limited. Copyright 2007. Purple, Green, and Yellow by Robert Munsch. Illustrated by Helene Desbuteau. Bridget went to her mother and said, I need some coloring markers. All my friends have coloring markers. They draw wonderful pictures. Mommy, I need some coloring markers. Oh, no, said her mother. I've heard about those coloring markers. Kids draw on walls. They draw on the floor. They draw on themselves. You can't have any coloring markers. Well, said Bridget, there are these new coloring markers. They wash off with just water. I can't get into any trouble with coloring markers that wash off. Get me some of those. Well, said her mother, all right. So her mother went out and got Bridget 500 washable coloring markers. Bridget went up to her room and drew wonderful pictures. She drew lemons that were yellower than lemons, and roses that were redder than roses, and oranges that were oranger than oranges. Her mother was amazed. She said, Wow, my kid is an artist. But after a week, Bridget got bored. She went to her mother and said, Mom, Did I draw on the wall? No, said her mother. Did I draw on the floor? No, said her mother. Did I draw on myself? No, said her mother. Well, said Bridget, I didn't get into any trouble, and I need some new coloring markers. All my friends have them. Mommy, there are coloring markers that smell. They have ones that smell like roses and lemons and oranges and even ones that smell like cow plops. Mom, they have coloring markers that smell like anything you want. Mom, I need those coloring markers. Her mother went out and got 500 coloring markers that smelled. Then Bridget went upstairs and she drew pictures. She drew lemons that smelled like lemons, and roses that smelled like roses, and oranges that smelled like oranges, and cow plops that smelled like cow plops. Her mother said, "Wow, my kid is an artist." But after a week, Bridget got bored. She said, "Mom, did I draw on the floor?" "No," said her mother. "Did I draw on the walls?" "No," said her mother. "Did I draw on myself?" "No," said her mother. "Well," said Bridget, "I need some new coloring markers. These are the best kind. All my friends have them. They are super indelible, never come off till you're dead, and maybe even later coloring markers. Mom, I need them." So her mother went out and got 500 super indelible, never come off till you're dead, and maybe even later coloring markers. Bridget took them and drew pictures for 3 weeks. She drew lemons that looked better than lemons, and roses that looked better than roses, and oranges that looked better than oranges, and sunsets that looked better than sunsets. Then she got bored. She said, "I'm tired of drawing on the paper, but I am not going to draw on the walls, and I am not going to draw on the floor, and I'm not going to draw on myself. But everybody knows it's okay to color your fingernails. Even my mother colors her fingernails." So Bridget took a purple, super indelible, never come off till you're dead, and maybe even later coloring marker, and she colored her thumbnail bright purple. And that was so pretty. She colored all her fingernails purple, black, and yellow. And that was so pretty. She colored her hands yellow, green, and red. And that was so pretty. She colored her face purple, green, yellow, and blue. And that was so pretty. She colored her belly button blue. And that was so pretty. She colored herself all sorts of colors, almost entirely all over. Then Bridget looked in the mirror and said, What have I done? My mother is going to kill me. So she ran into the bathroom and washed her hands for half an hour. Nothing came off. Her hands still looked like mixed up rainbows. Then she had a wonderful idea. She reached way down into the bottom of the coloring markers and got a special colored marker. It was the same color she was. She took that marker and colored herself all over until she was her regular color again. In fact, she looked even better than before. Almost too good to be true. She went downstairs, and her mother said, "Why, Bridget, you're looking really good today." "Right," said Bridget. Then her mother said, "It's time to wash your hands for dinner." But Bridget was afraid that the special color would not stick to the colors underneath. So she said, "I already washed my hands." But her mother smelled her hands and said, no soap." She took Bridget into the bathroom and washed her hands and face. All the special color came off, and Bridget looked like mixed up rainbows. "Oh, no," said her mother. "Bridget, did you color your hands with the coloring markers that wash off?" "No." "Bridget, did you color your hands with the coloring markers that smell?" "No." "Did you use the super indelible, never come off till you're dead and maybe even later coloring markers?" "Yes." "Yikes!" yelled her mother. She called the doctor and said, "Help, help, help. My daughter has colored herself with super, indelible, never come off till you're dead, and maybe even later coloring markers." "Oh dear," said the doctor. "Sometimes they never come off." The doctor came over and gave Bridget a large orange pill. She said, "Take this pill, wait 5 minutes, and then take a bath." So Bridget took the pill, waited 5 minutes, and jumped into the bathtub. Her mother stood outside the door and yelled, "Is it working? Is it working?" "Yes," said Bridget, "everything is coming off." And Bridget was right. Everything had come off. When Bridget walked out of the bathroom, she was invisible. "Oh, no," yelled her mother. "You can't go to school if you're invisible. You can't go to university if you're invisible. You'll never get a job if you're invisible. Bridget, you've wrecked your life." "Don't worry," said Bridget. She ran into her room, got the special colored marker, and colored herself entirely all over until you couldn't tell the difference. In fact, she looked even better than before, almost too good to be true. But her mother said, Bridget, you can't go through life like that. You're just a picture. Everyone will know there is something wrong. No, they won't, said Bridget. Yes, they will, said her mother. No, they won't, said Bridget. I colored Daddy while he was taking a nap, and you haven't noticed anything yet. Good heavens, yelled her mother, and she ran into the living room and looked at Daddy. He looked even better than before. Almost too good to be true. Doesn't he look great? Asked Bridget. I couldn't even tell the difference, said her mother. Right, said Bridget, and neither will he. As long as he doesn't get wet.
All right, boys and girls, so that's the end of our second book, Purple, Green, and Yellow. Let's talk about some things that make the book similar with Robert Munsch's writing style. So these are two different columns. We have always and often. He always uses repetition. For example, in Stephanie's ponytail, we had ugly, ugly, very ugly. In the book Purple, Green, and Yellow, she kept asking, did I draw on the walls? Did I draw on myself? She kept asking the same things, and those phrases were repeated throughout both of those books. Something strange happens. This is something that Robert Munsch will often have in his books, or he always has in his books. Students and teachers shave their heads in Stephanie's ponytail, and then the dad is colored in marker. Something he always does is he uses children and stories from real life. Bridget getting permanent markers. That's something that children often want to do. And then children copying each other. He uses hyperboles and exaggeration. Lemons that were yellower than lemons. And my mother is going to kill me. We know that that is a hyperbole and an exaggeration. He has a theme. Children often copy each other, and so the theme is to be a leader. Do not be afraid to be an individual. And then in Purple, Green, and Yellow, the theme was honesty. Some things he often does in his book, he stretches words out like no. Did that in both of the books. He uses funny voices in his books. He uses onomatopoeia. This is in another book, but he does have clang, clang, clang. And as we read more books, you're going to see lots of onomatopoeia. And then he also uses all capital letters. So these are things that often occur. So as we read more books, you're going to see things that always happen and things that often happen. And we will be growing this list as we continue studying Robert Munsch. So, continuing on, in conclusion, when reading books by the same author, look for the author's writing style or craft. Does the author do something in all of his or her books? Are there patterns in the author's writing? So now you're going to complete the puzzle piece in Schoology and see if you can identify the author's craft in the puzzle piece. So, I hope you enjoyed those stories. Robert Munsch has lots of shorter books that you can easily and quickly identify author's craft. He has lots of little things that he does, and the more we read them, the more that you will be able to identify and pick them up. So, we're going to continue studying his books and his writing this week, and I hope you enjoy them. So right now you should be continuing on to the puzzle piece for writing. Have a wonderful day, boys and girls.